There's something you need to understand, and once you see it, you will never unsee it again. Because the very thing that makes you feel misunderstood is the exact thing that makes you powerful. And the reason you keep attracting people who secretly resent you is not because you are weak, not because you are naive, but because you carry a light that exposes what others spend their entire lives trying to hide. And most people don't consciously realize this, they just feel it. They feel something in your presence that makes them uncomfortable, something that reflects back their own insecurities, their own lack of authenticity, their own suppressed emotions. And instead of rising to your level, instead of facing themselves, they choose the easier path. And that path is resentment, silent competition, hidden envy, and subtle sabotage. You think people react to what you say, but the truth is, they react to what you reveal without speaking. Because your presence doesn't just enter a room, it scans it, it feels it, it understands what's hidden beneath smiles and small talk. And that kind of awareness is rare. And anything rare immediately creates pressure in people who are used to hiding. Because when you see deeply, you don't give them the luxury of pretending. And that alone is enough to make someone uneasy around you without even knowing why. You don't have to call anyone out. You don't have to expose anyone directly. Your energy does it automatically. Your silence becomes louder than their words. Your calm becomes a mirror to their chaos. Your authenticity becomes a threat to their performance. And they feel that, even if they can't explain it, even if they try to ignore it, because deep down, every human being knows when they are being seen beyond the surface. And most people are not comfortable being seen like that. So what happens next is subtle, almost invisible at first. They lean toward you because your light feels safe. It feels real. It feels like something they've been missing. But at the same time, that same light starts to irritate something inside them because it reminds them of who they are not being. It reminds them of the truth they've been avoiding. It reminds them of the masks they wear just to survive in their own world. And that reminder creates tension. And here's the part most people never understand. They are not consciously thinking, I resent this person. It's deeper than that. It's emotional. It's instinctive. It's the quiet discomfort of standing next to someone who doesn't need to fake anything. Because when you don't fake, you unknowingly challenge everyone who does. And suddenly your natural way of being becomes a standard they never agreed to meet. And instead of rising to it, they start resisting it. They start comparing without admitting it. They start measuring themselves against you in ways they never did before. Your peace highlights their anxiety. Your confidence exposes their doubt. Your honesty threatens their carefully constructed image. And the more grounded you are, the more unstable they feel. Not because you are doing anything wrong, but because your existence disrupts their illusion of control. And people will protect their illusions at any cost. So instead of confronting themselves, instead of asking, why does this person make me feel this way? They unconsciously shift the focus onto you. They start finding small things to criticize, small flaws to hold on to. Because if they can reduce you even slightly, it relieves the pressure they feel inside. It gives them a sense of balance again, even if it's false, even if it's temporary. This is why you'll notice the shift. The energy changes before the behavior does. The tone becomes slightly colder. The enthusiasm becomes forced. The connection feels heavier, like something unspoken is building beneath the surface. And you feel it, because you always feel it. But instead of trusting that feeling, you question yourself. You wonder if you're imagining things. You try to adjust, to soften, to make them comfortable again. But what you don't realize is that your comfort is not the issue. Their discomfort is. And no matter how much you shrink, it won't solve it. Because the source of that tension is not your behavior. It's your being. It's the way you naturally show up. It's the way you exist without hiding. And for someone who has built their entire identity around hiding, that is unbearable over time. So the resentment grows quietly. It shows up in passive comments, in backhanded compliments, in moments where they subtly try to one-up you or dismiss you. It shows up when they stop celebrating your wins, when your growth suddenly becomes too much for them, when your light, the same thing they were drawn to, becomes the very thing they start pulling away from. And this is where it becomes dangerous for you, because your instinct is to understand, to empathize, to go deeper and figure out what's wrong. You start giving more, listening more, trying to fix a problem that was never yours to fix. And the more you give, the more they take. Not out of appreciation, but out of need, because your energy soothes something in them while simultaneously triggering something else. They are caught between needing your light light and resenting it. And that contradiction creates instability in the connection. One moment they value you, the next moment they distance themselves. One moment they open up, the next moment they shut down. And you're left trying to make sense of it, trying to bring consistency to something that was never stable to begin with, because it was built on an imbalance. An imbalance where you are self-aware and they are self-avoiding. And the truth is, self-awareness is intimidating to those who lack it, because it removes excuses. It removes denial. It removes the comfort of ignorance. And when you stand in that awareness, naturally, without forcing it, without preaching it, without even talking about it, you still become a living reminder of what they are choosing not to face. And that reminder is heavy. It lingers in their mind. It follows them even when you're not around. Because once someone feels that level of clarity, they can't fully unfeel it. So they begin associating that discomfort with you, not because you created it, but because you revealed it. And that's the difference that changes everything. You are not the cause of their insecurity. You are the spotlight on it. You are the moment where distraction stops working, where pretending loses its grip, where truth quietly enters the room without asking for permission. And truth is not always welcomed, especially by those who have spent years building a life around avoiding it. So when you start to see people pull away, when you feel that subtle shift from admiration to resistance, understand what is really happening beneath the surface. Understand that your light is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's exposing, it's awakening, it's challenging. And not everyone wants to be awakened. Not everyone wants to be challenged. Not everyone wants to see clearly. Some people would rather protect their darkness than face your light. And that choice has nothing to do with your worth, your value, or your intention. It has everything to do with their readiness. And when you finally see that clearly, when you stop internalizing reactions that were never about you, when you stop shrinking to make others feel bigger, when you stop dimming what makes you powerful just to keep connections that are built on imbalance, you begin to understand the real nature of your presence. You begin to see that your light is not just something beautiful, it is something disruptive, something that shifts energy, something that forces truth to surface whether people like it or not. And once you truly accept that, you stop trying to be digestible for people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop explaining your depth to those who only operate on the surface. You stop negotiating your authenticity just to maintain comfort in others, because you finally realize that the discomfort they feel is not something you need to fix. It is something they need to face. And until they choose to face it, no amount of your empathy will ever be enough to make them at peace with your light. You keep thinking that because someone is drawn to you, it means they understand you. It means they value you. It means they are aligned with you. But attraction is not alignment. Attraction is often hunger. And hunger does not care about harmony. It cares about consumption. It cares about filling a void. And when people feel something in you that they lack within themselves, they don't always come to grow. They come to take. They feel your warmth before they understand your boundaries. They feel your depth before they respect your limits. They feel your presence before they earn access to it. And that initial pull can feel powerful. It can feel like connection. It can feel like recognition, like finally someone sees you and you see them. But what you're actually experiencing in many cases is not alignment. It's contrast. It's the difference between who you are and who they wish they could be. And contrast creates fascination. Because when someone who lives in emotional chaos encounters someone who carries emotional clarity, it feels like relief. When someone who constantly performs meets someone who is effortlessly authentic, it feels like freedom. When someone who is disconnected meets someone deeply aware, it feels like home. But here's the truth they don't admit. They are not always willing to become what they admire. They just want to be near it. So they get close to you. They listen to you. They open up to you. They lean on your energy. They absorb your perspective. They take comfort in your stability. But while all of that is happening on the surface, something else is happening underneath. Something quieter but more dangerous. Because instead of using your presence as inspiration to evolve, they start using it as a substitute for their own growth. They don't build their own clarity, they borrow yours. They don't create their own peace, they depend on yours. They don't face their own darkness, they hide in your light. And at first, you don't notice it, because giving is natural to you, supporting is natural to you, holding space is natural to you. You feel like this is what connection is supposed to be, mutual, deep, supportive. But slowly, the balance starts to shift, because they are taking more than they are becoming. And that's where attraction turns into dependency. And dependency without growth turns into resentment. Because over time, your presence starts to highlight the gap between who they are and who they are pretending to be when they're around you. They feel good with you, but they don't feel good about themselves. And instead of addressing that gap, instead of doing the internal work required to close it, they begin to project it outward. They start feeling like they have to keep up with you. They start feeling like they are being measured by you. They start feeling like your existence is exposing their lack. Even if you never said a word, even if you never judged them, even if you never asked them to change, your standard is silent, but it's powerful. And not everyone is willing to rise to a silent standard. So what do? They try to level the field, not by growing, but by pulling you down, subtly at first. They question your decisions. They minimize your insights. They joke about your depth. They dismiss your intuition. They make you feel like you're too much, or too intense, or too sensitive. Not because you are, but because if they can convince you to shrink, they don't have to expand. And this is the trap that so many empaths fall into. They confuse closeness with compatibility. They confuse attention with respect. They confuse emotional sharing with emotional maturity. Just because someone tells you their story does not mean they are ready to rewrite it. Just because someone cries with you does not mean they are willing to heal. Just because someone needs you does not mean they value you. Need can exist without respect. And that's a dangerous place to build a connection. Because when someone needs your light but does not respect your essence, they will stay as long as it benefits them. And the moment your presence challenges them, they will resist you. They will pull back. They will become inconsistent. They will make you question what changed. But nothing changed in you. What changed is their tolerance for the truth your presence brings. And here's the part that hits the hardest. Some people are attracted to you not because they see you as an equal, but because they see you as a source of validation, a source of emotional support, a source of clarity, a source of stability. And as long as you keep giving, they keep staying. But the moment you ask for reciprocity, the moment you set a boundary, the moment you stop overextending, the dynamic breaks. Because it was never built on equality. It was built on access. And access without alignment will always collapse under pressure. This is why you feel confused when people who once seemed so connected to you suddenly feel distant. Because you thought the attraction meant something deeper. You thought it was mutual. You thought it was real. But what you were experiencing was one-sided depth. You were connecting. They were consuming. You were growing. They were relying. You were expanding. They were attaching. An attachment without alignment is unstable. It cannot hold when challenged. It cannot sustain when tested. It cannot evolve when required. So eventually it reveals itself through inconsistency, through tension, through subtle resistance, through emotional withdrawal. And you're left trying to hold on to something that was never fully there. But here's the shift that changes everything. You stop measuring connection by how strongly someone is drawn to you, and you start measuring it by how they show up when it's no longer easy. When your light challenges them, when your boundaries limit them, when your growth no longer benefits them. That's where alignment is revealed. Because aligned people don't just enjoy your light, they respect it. They don't just take from your energy, they contribute to it. They don't just feel good around you, they do the work to feel good within themselves, so they can meet you on your level instead of leaning on yours. And when you truly understand that, you stop being impressed by attraction. You stop being moved by intensity. You stop being pulled in by emotional dependency disguised as connection, because you see it for what it is, a reflection of need, not alignment. And once you see that clearly, you stop offering your depth to people who only want your surface. You stop investing your energy into connections that only exist when you are overgiving. You stop trying to build something real with people who are only present for what they can receive. Because real connection does not drain you. It strengthens you. It does not confuse you. It grounds you. It does not make you question your worth. It reflects it. And anything less than that is not alignment, no matter how strong the attraction feels. You've been taught to believe that boundaries push people away, that saying no makes you difficult, that protecting your energy makes you selfish. And because of that belief, you've spent so much of your life overextending, overgiving, over-explaining, thinking that if you just give a little more, understand a little deeper, tolerate a little longer, everything will finally balance out. But it never does. Because without boundaries, your empathy stops being a gift and starts becoming access. Open, unlimited, unprotected access to your time, your energy, your attention, your emotional capacity. And people will take what is not protected. Not always out of malice, but out of human nature. Because when something valuable is freely available, it is rarely respected. It is used. It is leaned on. It is depended on without consideration of its limits. And you become that source. The one people come to when they're overwhelmed. The one they unload on. The one they expect to understand without question, without pause, without condition. And at first it feels meaningful. It feels like purpose. It feels like you are needed. But being needed is not the same as being valued. And this is where everything starts to break down. Because the more you give without boundaries, the less people feel the need to give back. The more you make yourself available, the less people respect your time. The more you tolerate, the more they normalize crossing lines you never clearly drew. And slowly, without realizing it, you train people how to treat you. Not through what you say, but through what you allow. So every time you ignore your own exhaustion to be there for someone else, you send a message. Every time you say yes when your entire body is telling you no, you send a message. Every time you stay silent when something feels off, uncomfortable, or disrespectful, you send a message. And that message is simple. There is no limit here. There is no consequence here. There is no boundary here. And once that message is received, it becomes the standard. People don't question it. They don't analyze it. They adjust to it. They build expectations around it. They start assuming your availability, your patience, your understanding, as if it's something they are entitled to. And the moment you try to change that, the moment you try to reclaim space, to set limits, to protect yourself, it feels like a disruption to them. Not because you're wrong, but because you're different from who they got used to. And people resist change when it no longer benefits them. So when you finally say no, when you finally step back, when you finally choose yourself in a way you never have before, you will feel it immediately. The shift in their energy, the confusion, the frustration, the subtle guilt they try to place on you. Because boundaries expose who was respecting you and who was just benefiting from you. And that realization can be uncomfortable, because it forces you to see connections clearly, not as you hoped they were, but as they actually are. It forces you to recognize that some people were never interested in your well-being, only in your availability, only in your ability to give, to listen, to absorb, to carry what they didn't want to carry themselves. And when that source becomes limited, they don't celebrate your growth. They challenge it. They question it. They make you feel like you're changing in a negative way, like you're becoming distant, cold, or selfish. But what's really happening is that you're becoming aware of your limits, aware of your value, aware of the cost of unprotected empathy. And awareness changes behavior, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you feel the drain clearly, you can't ignore it. Once you recognize the imbalance, you can't keep pretending it's equal. So you begin to pull back, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You start choosing when to give instead of giving automatically. You start listening to your own needs instead of overriding them. You start pausing before saying yes, asking yourself if it aligns, if it feels right, if it costs too much. And that pause alone is powerful, because it breaks the pattern. It interrupts the automatic response that people have come to expect from you. And in that space, something new is created. Respect. Real respect. Not the kind that comes from what you provide, but the kind that comes from what you protect. Because boundaries don't push the right people away, they reveal them. The ones who respect your limits will adjust. They will understand. They will meet you where you are, not where it's most convenient for them. But the ones who resist, who push back, who try to make you feel guilty for having limits, they expose themselves without even realizing it. They show you that their connection to you was conditional, based on access, not appreciation, based on what you gave, not who you are. And that clarity is not a loss, it's a filter. It removes what was never aligned. It creates space for what is. Because when your energy is no longer being drained by people who take without growing, you have more to invest in people who actually reciprocate, who actually value, who actually contribute to your life in a meaningful way. And that's where your power shifts, from being available to being intentional, from being reactive to being selective, from being drained to being directed. Because your empathy was never meant to be limitless in its expression. It was meant to be guided by awareness, by discernment, by choice. And boundaries are the structure that makes that possible. They are not walls that block connection. They are filters that protect it. They ensure that what enters your life is aligned with what you deserve, not just what demands your attention. So the moment you stop seeing boundaries as something negative, as something that risks losing people, and start seeing them as something essential, as something that defines your standards, everything changes. You stop fearing disconnection. You start prioritizing alignment. You stop chasing acceptance. You start commanding respect. You stop giving to prove your worth. You start protecting it. And in that shift, your entire experience of connection transforms. Because now, people don't just come into your life easily, they earn their place. They show consistency. They show respect. They show understanding. Not because you demanded it aggressively, but because your boundaries made it clear that anything less will not be sustained. And that is where your true strength lies. Not in how much you can carry for others, but in how clearly you define what you will no longer carry at all.